Hello. Shut up. I'm sorry
Blooper reel.
for not vlogging for a while.
Do that again because I was talking.
Hello. I'm sorry for not vlogging for a while. I have been in the United States.
I'm just gonna move myself.
There are going to be multiple jump cuts per minute, in which I have been visiting my girlfriend, who is here right now.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Who am I saying hello to? You or them?
Me. Oh,
Hi,
I missed
hi.
you.
I miss you too. That's gross.
Who are you?
I'm Rachel. I'm Lewis's girlfriend. From the States.
From the States.
I'm from the Mitten. The only place in the world where you can say, yeah, I'm from here.
What's the thing up here called?
This thing?
Like a fish?
No.
It's a shark.
I don't know if it's really called anything.
I thought it looked like a shark. Like a mitten slapping a shark. So I was going to vlog over there. But I didn't. And now we're here. But we have a story to tell about getting here. And it's a doozy. So,
That's putting it lightly.
I'm glad I actually had a crack.
Yeah. Very cinematic.
Alright. So, the story starts.
Originally, there probably would have been a much cuter, cutesy couple look we're together video. A romantic story of how we met over Twitter. And then, well, now we're here, but there was a bit of a hiccup.
Getting here.
Yeah.
So.
More like a choke. Maybe something worse.
It's one of those hiccups where you throw up a bit in your mouth.
Yeah, it's the ones where you can't breathe. You just.
And then you breathe the throw up back down.
Oh. Breathe it
yeah.
into your lungs?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You don't want that in your lungs.
Mm-mm.
So we're going to tell the story about getting throw up in our lungs.
There's the video title.
So the plan was, I go over to America for 3 months, from May through to the end of July. And I did. Although when I got there, I did get stopped by security, probably because I was wearing like my hippie hoodie and like really baggy pants and my long hair. The guy asked me all sorts of questions and went through my bag and checked all my personal belongings, and it was invasive, but it was fine. It
was kind of funny because my friend and I were just sitting there waiting for Lewis to come out. This cop started coming out of the international arrivals area, and I looked to my friend and said, "Oh, did my English boyfriend get arrested?" I didn't expect the cop to actually walk up to me and go, "Are you waiting for this guy?" and showing me his passport. So then he pulled me aside and just asked me, like, basically if our stories lined up, and they did, and so he was let through, and it was all very cute, and then it happened.
Yeah. So that was fine.
We were thinking that after Lewis's 3 months, it'd be cool for me to come to the UK. We figured out that on a US passport, I could stay in the UK for up to 6 months maximum. Mm-hmm. So we thought, why not take a year off of uni for me to just spend some time with Lewis and his family in the UK, go to a different country for a change. I've never been outside the US, so super crazy, super wild. Do some creative stuff together, just chill out, really.
Yep, just do boyfriend-girlfriend things.
Yeah.
And so I contacted my parents, and I said, hey, do you remember me saying that my girlfriend might come back? Is it alright if she comes back for 6 months at the end of the summer? And they immediately were just like, yeah.
Best parents.
Go nuts. So we have their word
Mm-hmm.
that they're fine with that happening.
Mm-hmm. Foreshadowing. We booked the flight for 12:50 a.m. on July 26th.
Yes. So we were awake on the 25th
Yep.
in the morning.
All the way through until around 9 p.m. when we left for the airport to get there,
Yep.
3 hours earlier. So waited for the flight, got on the flight, 6 hours to Iceland. Then a layover.
Sorry. Unprofessional.
Then a 3-hour layover in Iceland.
And then 3 hours on another plane back to Gatwick Airport.
London, Gatwick. And then the thing happened.
So we get off the plane.
Then we breathed in some vomit.
We get off the plane and we start walking down. It's all so exciting. And I think at one point you said we did it.
Yeah.
We're here, and I say, got to go through immigration yet. Don't ever let me say that again.
I won't let you curse things again. It's okay.
So we get to the part where it says, if you have an EU passport or you're a UK citizen, go here, and if anything else, go here. So we part ways, and I say, see you in a minute.
Yep, just kind of, you're all wavy, happy.
See you in a second. Well, I didn't, and
I was seeing, other people breeze through the, the foreign passport area. Didn't look too stressful. I'm like, okay, this won't be too bad. Like, we anticipated a little bit of questioning because, like Lewis coming to the U.S., I was pushing my stay until, the end bits too. So we expected they might be a little bit, suspicious as to something going on, but I had a return flight booked for January, and we thought we had all the details figured out. We had our stories straight.
And they were true.
Yeah. Duh.
We didn't just make up some lies to get in.
So, go up to passport control, and at first things are going okay. They seemed to, immediately seem a little bit wary as soon as they noticed I wanted to stay for 6 months. They're like, that's pretty long.
Yeah.
What are you doing? In the UK. So, my answer was, I'm taking a year off of university, just to, have some time off, spend some time with my boyfriend who lives here, and do some creative stuff. One of their next questions was, money. Have you got money? And I said, oh, well, Lewis's family is essentially funding my trip, which they are. Thank you, Lewis's parents. So I had nothing to worry about, really, upon coming to the country, or so I thought. I told them that. I'm like, well, my boyfriend's parents are paying for everything. And they said, yeah, but how much money have you got? And at this point, perhaps not telling the truth would have been a better idea.
Maybe.
I was blatantly honest with them and said, I have, 4 cents. And one of the girls kind of looked at me like, really? They kept asking me questions. I figured this would just be, a small hiccup because, your family was still supporting me or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
At one point, I even pulled Lewis over and was like, here's my boyfriend, proof that he exists, he lives here, he's sleepy.
Mm-hmm.
But it they didn't just let me float by.
They told me to go back and wait where I was, which was just by a wall.
Yeah.
I could see the little interrogation going on for now.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I was waiting for probably another, 10 minutes? Whatever.
Something like that. I wasn't standing there super long.
Yeah.
But then, after a while, they just didn't seem satisfied with what answers I had. So they sat me down in this little glass pen. They said, we're going to have you wait here. We're going to look over, your answers, talk to a higher officer, something like that. And so I sat there for a while, just, freaking out a little bit. I still didn't think it would be too bad. But I sat there for, a solid amount of time, between a half hour and an hour, maybe.
At this point, they told me to go, get my bag off of the little conveyor belt thing. our suitcase.
Yeah.
And then basically go out and, because they knew my dad was at the airport, they said, go find him, and wait and we'll give you a call. They got my number, and yeah, they'll let me know when they know things. Excuse you.
After a little while, so Lewis has gone on, he's taken our bags.
Sitting with my dad.
They took me up to like this little security area, and they started going through my backpack and asking me even more questions. Like, you've never met his family before. Why, do you trust them? How can you trust your boyfriend if you've only been together for 3 to 4 months? Like, making a lot of snap judgments about our relationship, how long we've been together, our age difference.
Did we mention that?
A little bit. I'm 21. He's 28. So they're going through my bag and getting maybe a little too comfortable doing that. They were like opening up notebooks I had, looking at what I'd written, looking at drawings I'd made. I had a greeting card from one of my friends back home. They opened that up, asked me who the woman was that gave it to me, asked me why she gave it to me. They might have held on to a few things. They found they found some forms from my workplace back in Michigan. They were asking a lot about that. They found, that card that I told you about. Just some various articles, pieces of paper, written information in my backpack, and they held on to them. After their little interrogation, looking through my bag and everything, they gave it back to me, and just had me go sit back down in the glass pen for another hour-ish. Another significant chunk of time to be sitting in a glass pen.
At this point, I think my dad and I got a phone call from some lady dealing with this whole thing, and asked us a bunch of questions, I guess, to see if things line up and to check what my dad's income was, to check if he's actually willing, or the family's actually willing to support her for her stay, and a bunch of other questions. And it seemed like this lady was just freestyling questions, because she had asked me if I had ever had anyone else stay in my house from other countries, to which I said yes. For how long? To which I said, for how long? I mean, I've had people stay at my house for decent amounts of time before, between 4 and 5 months.
Not dissimilar to how long I'd be staying.
Yeah, exactly. The last person I did have over from a foreign country was my ex-girlfriend, and we're still good now. But she asked when we broke up, and at that point I was just thinking to myself, and, like, why? So yeah, I'm not entirely sure why she went into that, but she asked my dad a bunch of questions about me, and, like, I don't know. My dad ended up getting a little bit annoyed, just like, where's this line of questioning going?
Mm-hmm.
So.
And then things got worse. After they had questioned Lewis and his dad a little bit, 2 border force officers came down and took me from the glass pen to another area of the airport, kind of like hidden off to the side, not really accessible, by the general public. And they informed me that I would be interviewed, meaning they would sit me down in a small room and essentially, like, those, have you seen The First 48?
No.
So this is one of my American points of comparison. I don't know if they have it on British TV here, but it was kind of like The First 48, kind of like this, like a crime show.
Right.
But a real crime show.
Okay.
So, you know how in those shows there's always like a small room some, guys curled up sitting at a table like this, and they're monitoring him over a security camera.
Mm-hmm.
And then someone goes in and interrogates them and, writes down their answers, things like that, relating to a crime. That's essentially how this was going to go. They were going to ask me the questions they had already asked before, but probably in more detail, and they were going to write down the answers. That's what I was told. But first, they took me into another room, took what basically could have been a mug shot, took a couple, photos of my face, and they fingerprinted me. And I said straight up to the women, facilitating this, man, it makes me feel like a criminal. And they just chuckled it off and were like, oh yeah, lots of people say that, but it's not what it is. No. No, you're not a criminal. To prove their point, they put me in a locked holding room without any of my things, without my phone. I couldn't contact anybody. They didn't want camera phones. They didn't want iPhones or anything that could take a photo of the place I was in. Why? Because it was horrible! Just this small room with a metal bench, wrapping around half the room, and then, 2 tables with benches next to them. There was a bathroom in the room. There were, 2 bathroom stalls and a shower, if we wanted it. There was a TV in the corner, just, and a shelf full of random books, including 2 of the 50 Shades of Grey books. Great. Crucial detail.
Did you get through them?
I started reading, I started reading 50 Shades Darker.
Is that a sequel?
Yeah, it's the second one in the trilogy.
About them. Okay.
And it was as horrible as they say. Mm-hmm. Oh my word.
All right.
But there were a few other people in this room with me, and this was where I was to wait for my interview. And they kept saying, oh, soon, someone will be back soon to get you for an interview. Okay. But I have no contact with the outside world. I can't tell anybody what's going on. Since my phone's been taken away.
Yeah, I think me and Dad have also been told this at this point. Just, she's going to be interviewed. We'll let you know in a couple of hours, is what they said. Yeah.
They kept saying, oh, we're really busy. It takes them a while. So I was in this room for, I want to say, 2 to 3 hours waiting for the interview itself. And it's a miserable place to be for that amount of time, not knowing what's happening, with other people who are just as clueless as you in the same situation. They're being held, either waiting for a response or, an answer after their interview as to whether or not they're being allowed into the country. And that's what was at stake here. They were detaining me. They didn't know whether or not they wanted to let me into the UK. Mm-hmm. So that's what this interview was going to determine, I guess.
So you can imagine, just how stressful this is for her, but also, for me and my dad, we don't know if they're just going to let her out, without telling us, just straight through the arrivals gates. So, I was there sort of watching these arrival gates for a good 3 hours, just, is she coming? Like when a dog is at home waiting for its owner to come home from work, every car that passes, it gets excited and it's not the owner. And this is kind of the same kind of situation. They didn't tell us anything. They just said, we've still got further inquiries to do.
All the time. Yeah.
Wouldn't ever let us, see anyone face to face. They said, no, phone calls are good enough. Yeah. And it was terrible.
And especially given that, I have anxiety, that was just peak levels the whole time. I've described it to Lewis and his family. It was like a constant anxiety or panic attack. So I spent these 2 or 3 hours, kind of trying to sleep a little bit. But I mean, metal benches and tables, where are you supposed to sleep? And the poor other people in there were just making do. They gave us these flimsy pillows and blankets. I guess it was the best they had, but they were just curled up on these metal benches, just sleeping. And and it was miserable. So I passed out at some point and woke up to someone saying they're here for you. It's time for your interview. Sorry.
You right?
Yeah, I'll be glad to be done recounting this. The people that were there for me were one younger border force officer, both women, and one was older, and we shall refer to this older border force officer as Madam Morality. I'll explain this in a minute. But, so they took me into the little room and started interrogating me, asking me, what Lewis's name was, what his last name was, how old he was, where does he live. They even asked me what your dad did at one point. Someone did. They asked, were you invited? What's the financial situation? What are you planning to do here? Are you planning to do touristy things? Are you just going to stay with him? Why did you need to come to Britain for 6 months after spending 3 months with him in the US?
It's almost like couples don't want to stay together.
Wow!
Or do. What did I mean to say there? You know what I meant.
What a concept.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh. So, when we came to the question of funding, I, again, said that, Lewis's family is supporting me. They're covering, the basic costs of the trip, of me staying there, food, board, etc. And Madam Morality says, pardon my horrible botched British, but do you think that's morally right to do? You think that's okay? It's this family you've never met, and you're going to go to their place, stay there for 6 months, and let them fund everything you do. You're just going to let them pay for everything. I don't think that's right. I couldn't do that. All very regal, very high and mighty, scolding me, in essence, for
being invited.
For being invited.
Into someone's home. How dare they be so generous?
How dare they? She was berating me right and left for my answers. Shouting, telling the younger girl to ask me certain questions, or telling her not to ask me certain questions. Saying that, I was talking for too long about things that didn't matter too much. But as well as berating me, she was also heavily misconstruing what I was saying. Including such, she asked me how I would be supporting myself. And I mean, again, the answer to that should be, not really, to be honest, since Lewis's family is being so generous. But I was planning on doing freelance or commissions work in the UK, online. I do digital artwork, I produce music like Lewis does, and I allow people to commission me for creative work like that. So I was planning on doing it here, over the internet. No big deal. Mm-hmm. I've sold things online before. I have TeePublic and Redbubble stores, etc. So it's, it's a passive side source of income for me, or it has been for a long time. And so I told him that. I said, I plan on making some money over, through these commissions and through freelancing. And the lady said, so would it be correct to say that you'd be working in the UK as a freelancer? And, I mean, I said yeah, because I'd be in the UK and I'd be a freelancer.
See, that's putting words in your mouth, though, because what they want to know is if you're working in the UK for people in the UK, freelancing, they probably thought she was going to paint some pictures here and sell them, physical copies out to UK folk passing on the street or something. Every time I've been to the States, and I've been questioned, whether it's a big questioning or a little one, they've always asked how I plan to make any money. To which I say I'm a music producer, self-employed. I make my own music and I sell it online, and I'll be making more here and earning passively online while I'm here, and perhaps anything I release while I'm here. They're always okay with it. Mm-hmm.
You even say, I brought my laptop.
Yep.
I'm going to keep producing here.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, chill.
And it's been I think this would be either the fourth or fifth time I've been to America for a long stint to be here, well, be there, and also include some work. Every time it's been fine.
They seemed really intent upon casting doubt on our relationship. What if things don't work out between you two? Trying to imply that...
We're gonna throw you out on the street.
Yep.
Make your own way home.
I kept saying, I really don't think that's going to happen. Lewis and his family are, really kind people. Even if Lewis and I did fall out, unlikely. They'd be decent enough people to help me find my way home. I'm like, they're not going to leave me homeless. They're not going to kick me out. But can you support yourself? And I kept saying, yeah, I can make money with commissions. I can make a decent amount of money. Yeah, but how much? So I was giving them, like, rough estimates of how much I might make in a month. And Madame Morelli is like, not even a hotel is that cheap. You wouldn't be able to last a day in the UK like that. This is an expensive country. Just really emphasizing that if you break up, you're gonna die.
I like how she went straight back to the you're not gonna last a day by yourself, even though you said that you wouldn't be by yourself, even if we did fall out. Long
story short, this interview was definitely more of a biased interrogation. Everything I said was misconstrued, and they tried to make demons out of both me and Lewis and his family, with no context. And so, after the interview, they sent me back to the lovely holding room and told me, we're going to take this to a higher officer, look over your answers, and we'll give you an answer as to whether or not you can get into the country.
At this point, me and my dad are being told that you've had your little interview or whatever, and we thought, okay, so are we going to get a result? And no, because obviously it's being taken to some other place. We are told once again the same thing. They just said they have more inquiries to make.
So, and I mean, they were asking you things too.
At this point, how many hours have we been just...
At least 6 hours we've been in the airport since landing.
Yeah.
They were also, like, really heavily, like putting words in Lewis's dad's mouth too. His dad said that, whoever was over the phone literally said to him, you can't afford to house another person, without knowing anything about his income or his life. It's clear that they want a certain answer, and they'll do what it takes to make it sound like you're giving them that. So, interview's over. I'm back in the holding room. It's another 2 to 3 hours. I think it was 3. It was like 1 something in the morning when I got out of the interview, I want to say. And then, oh my gosh, the stress in between, like just waiting for someone to come back, thinking every phone call might be for me, looking up anytime someone came in the little office right outside the room. So it, waited another 3 hours, just kind of trying to sleep again. And then they came back. I had fallen asleep again somehow. They woke me up. Time to, they're here for you again. So they took me out into the same room that they had interviewed me in, and gave me back, like, the papers or whatever that they had taken from me before. And then they said, you've been denied entry into the UK. And they handed me info about why I had been refused, and a sheet of information about applying for immigration bail. The list of reasons they didn't want me, or they didn't think I was a genuine visitor, as they say, were 1, the funding. They said that me being fully reliant on Lewis's family was, dissatisfactory, is that the word? Unsatisfactory?
I don't know what it said.
They said that they didn't believe I would return to the U.S. after my 6-month stay. They thought I was trying to illegally move in. And furthermore, they said that the freelancing work I wanted to do was illegal. So on those grounds, they said, you've been refused entry into the UK. Here's a flight that'll take you home in a day and a half. It was really early morning on the 27th at this point. The flight they were going to send me home on was at 8 p.m. the next day. So, I mean, how do you think I took this news? It was horrible. I was so shocked that it felt like my body lit on fire. Like, just suddenly, my forehead, my face, my arms were just heating up like crazy. I was super feverish. Felt like I was gonna throw up. And these women were so cruelly chill about it. Just, oh, we'll get you some water. Like, it'll be okay. It's probably just shock.
Did they say that?
Yep.
Oh my god.
And took me back to ye old holding room. But I asked, well, okay, if I'm being sent home, can I at least see Lewis? Can I see him and his dad? They're still here waiting for me. Can I go see them before I leave? And old Madame Morality's back again. She was like, no, you can't see them, but we'll give him the number for the holding room and he can call you, okay? So there was this, like, payphone style phone in the holding room. We couldn't make calls, but we could receive them. So they gave Lewis the number for the room. They reached out, told them what had happened, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's some lady phoned on my phone, obviously, and she said, I can't remember it word for word, but in summary, she basically said, okay, we're done with the interviews, and unfortunately, Rachel has been denied entry into the UK. And at that point, similar reaction from me. I froze up, didn't say a word down the phone. I think she kind of expected that because she didn't respond to me either. But I kind of couldn't talk for about 30 seconds, and I was just boiling hot all over my face. And my dad could see that I was frustrated on the phone, and so obviously he knew what was going on, and then he basically told me to pass him the phone. I don't know what he said to her, but at this point I'd been given the number to call Rachel, and so I used my dad's phone to do that, and we started having a conversation which was more blubbering than words, I think, but
After a little while, Lewis remembered that I'd been given a sheet of information about immigration bail that is appealing the decision of Border Force to deny me entry, to see if I could still be let in. It's a legal procedure.
Mm-hmm. You want me to explain it?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I remembered after we had this phone call, and in the phone call,
Can you start that over so you're not
what?
pulling clothes out of your crotch?
Dad and I left the airport frustrated and upset, but we had to go home. There wasn't anything else we could do at this point. And on the way home, I googled what immigration bail was all about, and it looked pretty complicated. I found the UK government website detailing it, but also there were other sites for solicitors, lawyers for dealing with this sort of thing. And they were like, oh, experts in this sort of thing. Do you feel like you yourself or a loved one has been wrongly detained at the border control immigration thingy-do? And I was like, yes, that's me. I
identify.
I feel like this has happened to me.
Relatable.
So I look it up the whole way home and, discuss with Dad if this is something we can do. And he was like, yeah. So we get home and we start making some phone calls after I tell my mum about the whole thing, and we have a little hug and a cry, and she's upset as well. So yeah, we look into this thing and we call some solicitors and give every single detail that we've just given you just now, and they say, oh, we'll come back to you if we think you've got a case. And they did. They came back and they said, okay, we think you've got a case here, because obviously despite the fact that what we've told them is the truth, it's been misinterpreted as you not telling the truth, and also them just getting things wrong or putting false meanings of what you said into our story. So yeah, they accept the thing, and you know, we give them some coin and off they go. So what we have to do at this point is churn out a bunch of documents relating to household income, proving our address, copies of our passport, photos of us two together, and we had to write them letters, one from both my parents and one from myself. The one from the parents saying, yes, we're willing, blah, 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 just a covering letter, being honest.
Willing to support me.
Willing to support, yeah. And a covering letter from me detailing our story, how we met and everything like that, and what we're doing. So we did all of this, and we didn't have much time to do it.
So now we're getting into the day of the 27th, like 4 in the morning onwards, like 7 onwards, I want to say.
I'm sorry, where are we right now?
Like after, I was given the decision, it was probably like 7 in the morning.
Yeah.
And then you guys just jumped on things.
Mm-hmm.
So we haven't slept in
since the Wednesday morning.
24 hours. Yep. Yeah. Time zone jump, accounted for, it's still been over 24 hours since we've slept.
Yep.
So, I was fitfully trying to, in the holding room, just awaiting my fate. I didn't know what was going to happen to me. Because, my flight was the next day. I didn't know if they were going to keep me there or what was going on. So, Lewis and the solicitor kept calling me on the phone in the holding room, so I was answering questions there, just kind of doing whatever I could. At around 4 that day, on the 27th, it was decided that I would be moved from the holding room in the airport to a, what is called an immigration removal center. I was taken in a heavily secured van from the airport to Colnbrook IRC. And when I got there, they, asked me some more questions. They did, some medical stuff. They confiscated most of my things. Took my phone and my laptop, of course. But I was taken to what's called, I think it's Sahara. Is it?
Yeah, that was it.
It was a women-only floor where, women stayed either awaiting legal decisions or just flights to take them out of the country. All things considered, this place was decently nice for what it was. The people there were not rude at all. They were very understanding of my situation, very comforting, and overall really optimistic too. They greeted me with smiles. They were very conversational. Several of them even asked me why I was there or why I'd been pulled aside by Border Force, and they would roll their eyes and go, "Oh, that's BS." Mm-hmm. They allowed me to have a really bare basics mobile phone. They issued me one. It had no cameras in it. This was another place where they didn't want photos taken or anything like that. You could only really make voice calls. So they took the SIM card out of my iPhone and put it in this smaller phone, and that's how I stayed in contact with people. So I was able to call Lewis basically whenever I wanted. I was able to call the lawyer. I was able to call my family. Now it's going on 7 p.m. I got there around 7 p.m., I want to say.
Okay.
And now Lewis and his family have done everything in their part, legally, for the case. So now the solicitor needed things from me. He faxed me some paperwork. I filled it out in a hurry. It was 7:30, and he needed to leave by 8. So I managed to get it all done, get it all faxed to him with 20 minutes to go. And that was our legal part.
Yeah. So after that point, it was just wait, right?
Yep. He just said, "We've filed everything. He sent the case to the Home Office, which is
just the government part that deals with immigration, I think, for the most part.
Yeah. Things and people going in and going into and coming out of the country. And he said, "All right, now we wait." So
we wait.
We waited.
On the Saturday, the day afterwards, me and my dad were going to travel up to this place, which is about a 2-hour drive from where we live, to visit, because there's visiting hours from 2:30 to 8:45, and so we start making our way up there, and I get a call from this guy that Rachel's parents know.
Steve. His name's Steve.
Okay. And he's also had some time working as a solicitor before in a different field, but he knows his legal stuff. And he's just like, if there's anything I can do to help, I've heard about what's going on, if there's anything I can do to help, please let me know.
Coincidentally, at that same exact time, someone had come into the bedroom I was staying in and told me, "You're being sent home." Because if you'll remember, this was the date on which that 8 p.m. flight was that was supposed to send me back to Detroit.
It was about what, like
2:30?
Quarter to 2 in the afternoon, I think this was, when
really?
you were told about the flight.
Oh, yeah.
And they said
I needed to leave at 2:30.
You're leaving at 2:30, and me and my dad were nowhere near close enough to reach there by that time. So, you know, it was you're starting to get that feeling of, is it time to give up? But I said to Rachel in a phone call, "Steve just called. He's the vicar that your parents know here. He has some experience, and he's all we've got, so call him, because we can't get a hold of our current lawyer. He's away for the weekend."
And he's a good family friend. Like, I knew this guy. I gave him a call and asked him what to do, because the lady who had informed me, "You're being sent home," I had said to her, "We don't know that yet. I've got an open case going. Like, solicitors are working on it. They're, seeing if they can overturn the decision to, deny me entry." And, nice one. So she said, "Are you refusing the flight then?" And I'm going, I don't know what this means. Do I refuse it? Will I get in trouble? I had no idea, so I was just telling her, I don't know. I don't know. She goes, "Well, can you tell me within the next 5 minutes, because I need to tell the people who are supposed to pick you up." Called Steve in a hurry, and Steve was super calm, super comforting about the whole thing. He just said, "Tell them that, in essence, it's a violation of your rights to leave without an answer. Or just to be, shipped off back to the U.S. without being given a decision on your case, a final decision." So I refused the flight on those grounds. I just said, I can't and will not go without having a final legal decision.
At this point, me and my dad is like, are we just going to turn around at this point? Because there's nothing much that can be done. Because I don't know that Steve was giving her that advice. I didn't know that was something that could be done. So to me and my dad, it was basically over. Like, she was going home. So my dad was like, "Shall we pull over and wait for a phone call? Shall we turn around?" And I was just like, "No, keep going." I don't know why. I just thought we should keep going. So we did. We kept going. And you refused your flight?
I refused my flight. They informed me that, in essence, as far as refusals go, it's a little bit like 3 strikes, you're out. Refusing the first flight is pretty much like, okay, like they take note of it, put it down in your file as, they refuse this flight. The second one is more interpreted as not complying. And then the third time, you're escorted out. So this was pretty much the risk-free refusal, and for a good reason. But really glad I did, because it ended up being that Lewis and his dad could come visit me.
Yeah. Which we did do
We did.
We got there at about 4 o'clock. Yeah, and we stayed for about 4 hours through till 8:45 or so. And it was...
Until the very end.
It was really nice, yeah, until they closed.
Yeah, we spent as long as we could together, because we had no idea how this was going to go.
It was pretty casual, honestly.
Yeah, it was very refreshing. So, this was the first time I met Lewis's dad in person.
And the first time we'd seen each other since we said, see you in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Way back then.
So, that took up most of Saturday. I was still just waiting on a decision. Then, next day, Sunday, a couple of fun things happened. I was informed at, around 11 a.m. that I'd had another flight arranged for me to leave the U.S. And I was on the phone with Lewis when this happened. Someone came in and I was still in bed, and they were like, hey, I've just been called. They've arranged another flight for you at 2 p.m. in the afternoon, and it was already 11. So you think that's pretty last minute, especially considering the airport was an hour away.
Mm-hmm.
But I panicked, admittedly.
Of course you would.
Yeah, and just like, well, this is really unexpected. This is weird.
I was in a call with you at that time, wasn't I?
Yeah, I just said that.
Sorry.
But
yeah, I love you too.
The girl who came to tell me had actually been in the she'd been in the room where we had been visiting the day before, me and Lewis. So she was aware of the legal situation and that my case was still resting with the Home Office at that time. So she offered to tell the people on the other end, she said, should I tell them that you're waiting on a decision from the Home Office? And I said, oh, please, thank you. So she did, and it was fine, and she said, you're not going to be escorted, it's okay. She worded it as, it's just a normal flight. She also, that day, called some people who were on the inside, I suppose, at the reception office at Colnbrook that knew a thing or two about where my case was. And she was able to tell me that the Home Office had my case, and they were reviewing it that day.
And that they had cancelled all future flights for you.
All future flights, until a decision was made. So they actually cancelled that 2 p.m. flight for me. It was very, very grateful. I was talking with, my dad. I was keeping my family updated in America. Talking more with Steve, and of course talking with Lewis constantly, because, I was scared out of my mind.
So was I.
Leaned on this guy a lot. So I was just looking for comfort at this point, because I was really, really anxious, really scared. But both Steve and my dad were estimating that we would have an answer on my case the next morning, Monday morning. Hopefully in the morning, so sooner rather than later. So Sunday was just tension, just all day, just waiting.
We stayed up in a call from basically, 10 o'clock at night through until 4 in the morning.
Oh, yeah, just about.
Something like that.
Yep.
Just talking, just discussing what tomorrow could bring.
And it was, essentially, at this point, I was just leaning on God for literally everything. I was at my wit's end. I thought I was going crazy. Just praying constantly, hoping that, whatever happened would be okay. Because, earlier on I'd been really nervous about being sent back to the U.S. because I had just gotten off a lease with a rental place. I didn't really have anywhere to stay permanently. But we did some talking with my dad and, my mom, and they said that I could possibly stay with them. I also had a lot of outreach from a few of my friends in Michigan that offered to let me stay with them if need be. Just a lot of people really showed a lot of love and hospitality to me in these moments.
So whichever way things went, things would have been okay. I mean, sure.
We really wanted the outcome to be one thing.
Yeah, obviously.
Well, and furthermore, one of the main points of the case we were making, in order to keep me in the UK... Will you finish your drink already? You're putting your elbow in my face. Don't you dare. one of the main points in the case we were trying to make for us, though, was that we would shorten our visit. What?
Just do that bit again. So I was thinking of how funny it would be if I did just spit that in your face while you were talking about something like so serious, and I'm just like, I love you.
I love you too. One of the main points in the case we were trying to make, though, something our solicitors had suggested was that we try and fight for a shorter stay period for me in the UK. Because, I mean, one of the first issues had been how long I was staying. So, like, some of the fine print in the case said we'd be willing to shorten the trip to 2 or 3 months, you know, if it lowered suspicion of me, basically. Mm-hmm. So, at this point, we pretty much assumed that we'd have a lot less time than we had planned for, like half or less.
Yeah.
All that to say, something my dad said towards the end, like, I called him pretty concerned the night before we were supposed to receive this decision. And I just said, I'm really nervous. I don't know what's going to happen. And he said, well, yeah, you do. It's going to be one of two things. And you'd be hard-pressed to somehow find a third option. He said, you're either going to be sent back to the States, and we've already figured out a few things for you there. So you're either going to be sent home, or you're going to stay there. And either way, things are going to be okay. Like, you know your two outcomes. There's nothing worth stressing yourself out about. It was like 3:30 in the morning for me at this point, or for us in the UK. So my dad was like, you should just try and get like 4 hours of sleep. Because also at this point, a woman had poked her head into the room and said, you're going to have an interview at the airport at 9 in the morning. The word interview was a little bit panic-inducing considering how the last one went.
Not to mention, we didn't really know what it was an interview necessarily about.
Or even if it was an interview.
Yeah.
I asked the woman who told me to clarify, and she said, well, it could be an interview. It could be them just talking to you about whether you're being sent home or kept here. It could be, you know... She essentially said, I don't know what it is.
It's just the constant theme of the whole weekend was just not knowing what's coming next. Yep. Like, you know rough events that are coming next, but not what they are. Perhaps not when they are. And it's just, it's horrible to go through that, especially when, you know, you've got all these things in your head that could be happening. Mm-hmm. You don't know which is going to happen, and, like, they're playing on your mind. Like, okay, you might know what the end results are, and you know that everything's going to be okay, but...
What are the steps that are going to happen?
What are the steps that's going to happen? Yeah. And also, like, you know, you overthink things. You can't help it in such a stressful situation, and, you know, it gets you down. Especially when you know, you obviously want one of the results more than the other.
Mm-hmm. Just after what I've been through, it was... And this word is used jokingly a lot, but it was honestly triggering to think about going through another instance of what I'd already been through with the scolding border force officers. So, because we lacked so many details, Lewis and I pretty much had to sort all of these things out logically ourselves. Mm-hmm. Like, deduce, well, wait, there's no point interviewing me again. Like, they already have their answers. I would say the same thing. Yeah. You know, things like that. So, but after...
Love you.
I love you. After what Steve and my dad had said, you know, after, you know, the estimate that we'd get an answer in the morning, we were like, all right, this has to be it. Whatever this is that I'm being taken to the airport for, it's the answer we're waiting for. So... we were super tense and anxious, but we tried to sleep for a little while. Mm-hmm. Didn't do so hot, but we tried.
Yeah, I don't think I fell asleep.
But, so yeah, that morning at 6:30, the officer on duty at Sahara woke me up and said, you're leaving at 7:30 for your interview at 9. So I got up, I called Lewis, we stayed on the phone right until the end, until I needed to leave. I was still nervous as all get out, but I kept telling myself I wasn't going to be afraid. Like, I knew the two answers. You know, one of them was going to happen, and I was going to be okay. So I just said, all right, I'm going into this confidently.
Mhm.
So
I was less confident.
yeah,
Okay, I don't know, I was feeling confident, but since I didn't know what this thing was, and since we'd been severed contact because your little temporary phone was given back
mm-hmm.
and your other one was out of charge,
Mm-hmm.
I knew I wasn't going to know what was going on for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just tried to get some sleep,
Mm-hmm.
considered traveling up there in preparation for
Mm-hmm.
perhaps her getting let out,
Yep.
but didn't in the end. We just decided to wait on whatever was happening because it might have been a huge waste of time.
Mm-hmm. But so rode in another, secure van back to the airport. They took me back through security, looked through all my stuff again, and took me to the old holding room. And I expected to just sit there in tension again for another few hours. But I had not been there for maybe 5 to 10 minutes, and an officer, a border force officer, came in and said, Rachel, can I have a word with you in another room? And I had seen this officer before. His name's Ben. I think he deserves a shout out. Because the first night that I had spent in that holding room, I had just broken down crying, like a number of times. But one of these times, on one of these occasions, he saw me and came in and had me, sit next to him, and he goes, hey, you've had a shit day, haven't you? And I was like, yeah, pretty bad. He was like, oh, an emotional female, oh no. But he told me that I was, reacting to a decision that hadn't even been made yet. And he said, keep your chin up. Just stay strong, it'll be okay. So this same officer, was now pulling me aside Monday morning. So he takes me into another room, and he goes, now, do you know why you've been brought here this morning? And I said, yeah, I've been brought here for an interview. And he goes, yep, okay. There is no interview. And then he went on to say that the case had won, and that the decision to deny me entry had been overturned, and I was being allowed to stay in the UK not just for 3 months, but for the full 6 we had originally planned on.
Mm-hmm. And with no extra bail conditions.
No conditions.
Which we hadn't discussed yet in this video.
No.
Okay? So there was a chance that on bail you could have something like having to check into an immigration officer like once a week, or make a phone call, or perhaps
wear a tracking bracelet.
Or wear a tracking bracelet. So, we were expecting maybe one of these things. I don't know if they're mandatory. Clearly not.
None of them.
We didn't get any of them. So
none of them. They had marked my passport to show that I'd been endorsed, that it was okay for me to be in the UK. Mm-hmm. And he just told me, please make sure you leave before 6 months. Like, 6 months is the absolute maximum. Just make sure you leave before then and you're okay. And
so not to downplay any of this hell that you had gone through, but it's basically as if it didn't happen. We've just lost a few days and we're stressed out and broke.
Yep.
But the result, we got what we wanted.
And he said, he apologized to me on behalf of Gatwick and said essentially, like, I'm sorry if you were mistreated by anyone here. He said, I'm sorry on their behalf. And I said, you didn't. So, and he sent me on my way. And Lewis and his dad came to pick me up, and
that was another 2 hours of waiting.
Oh! But 2 hours, knowing that there's an end after 2 hours.
Yeah, and
not
it's the good
an
one.
indefinite amount of time.
Yeah. And then it's a 2 hour drive home.
It was a great drive.
Yeah, true. It was nice. It was wonderful.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Roll credits and main theme. But yeah, very importantly, obviously, got a lot of people to thank for this. I mean, it was not just us two that got this result to where it was. Obviously, we've got Rachel's parents to thank for informing Steve, the guy who basically gave us one of our many saving graces. Got them to thank for being supportive and, keeping us clear-headed. My parents to thank for being supportive, both keeping us level-headed and, money.
Yeah.
They've been very, very generous on that front. And obviously there are people out there, somewhere along the line I told a bunch of friends about this and I posted on social media about this disaster, and I got a lot of support, both in words and in coins, which is, humbling, honestly. We are eternally grateful for all of that.
We really are.
From everyone who did it. So...
without you guys, it would have taken us a lot longer to pay back for the solicitors.
All that
solicitors.
stuff.
But we really are grateful. It means the world to us.
Yeah, we wouldn't have had anything for free time or anything like that. We would have just basically come over here and been in debt. Which,
fun.
Yeah, great. So, no one needed to do that for us. So, again, eternally grateful.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And so this begins our 6-month-ish adventure in the UK together.
In which I'll attempt to vlog a bit more.
Both of us. Together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now we've said it, so we have to do it.
Commitment. Accountability.
Shall we kiss?